Miami, how we doing?
Hello and welcome to this edition of FOF Live. This is our first FOF Live this season, this spring, to give you everything we've seen so far this spring season up in Jupiter. And as you can see, we have a packed house for everyone watching. We have myself, Daniel, we have Eli, Kevin, Isaac, Nate, Alex Carver, and joining us, Lewis Ariel Weiss. This is not going to be Clayton Kershaw talk, but we'll see how far he go into the stream until he's mentioned. But this is going to be a great stream. Lots of talk, major league, minor leagues. The Marlins making a major league signing, Peter Bendix, Bruce talking, Clayton McCullough. I'm going to start off with you, Eli, the head of everything here on FOF. What have you seen so far for the Marlins this spring and maybe a little bit on this off season? That this is our first full-fledged live show.
Yeah, welcome back, everybody. We should be all good to do these weekly throughout spring training, and then, of course, twice a week during the regular season. So everybody that sticks with us and is in the chat with us, asking us questions, and all that is welcome. And we're going to cover so much about this team here in 2025. I have to live vicariously through my guys on the grounds who have been at spring training so far this year. But it's been an interesting start to things, all things considered. At the last moments, really kind of past the deadline, you could say. First pitchers and catchers workout gets underway, and then the Marlins finally make their first major league free agent signing. So I think the frustration peaked right before Cal Quantrill comes in and addresses the one kind of area that felt a necessary piece to address, even under these circumstances, is making sure that there's enough arms just to survive this season. I think everybody's well aware about what the situation is here in 2025, realistically, not trying to chase a certain win total or really much major league success, but you got to get through the season. You got to develop guys at the big league level, and you got to make it through without putting underqualified players and unfinished prospects in bad positions. So what they've done to paint around the edges and bring in some sort of veterans between him, Albert Almora Jr. on a minor league deal. We'll see if he cracks the team as like a center field defensive replacement. They've done enough to avoid a total catastrophe. And to this point in spring training, as we'll remind people throughout spring training, the only goal is to make it through as healthy as possible without guys getting hurt. And to this point, the Marlins are doing pretty well in that regard. There are a couple guys with minor setbacks at this point. Andrew Nardi seems like the one guy entering spring training that all of a sudden is an injured list candidate coming out of camp. We'll see how he progresses moving forward. In the grand scheme of things, through the first week of spring, they've avoided too many catastrophic setbacks health-wise. So as long as you enter the season with most guys available and some real competitions going on, that's the low bar that you want to clear as a team in this position. Just make it through with having your guys available and at their best physically.
Yeah, Kevin, Isaac, Carver, you three have been at Jupiter the most frequent out of all of us here. Just what have you guys seen so far in this limited time we've seen with the Marlins, whether it's some of the front office people like Bruce or Peter, or a lot of the players we're seeing either in the major or minor league side?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's been definitely more different than what we've seen the last couple of years. At least some of their methods of practicing, for example, pitchers going straight into a live VP situation, which I think is pretty cool actually. When you come to think about it, you're putting them right into a very competitive atmosphere, situation where you have the live a hitter in the box instead of just doing a bullpen, just throwing there to throw. So I think that definitely helps a lot. Having the pitchers at shortstop was interesting too. I guess it's just to it's a different way of doing PFPs. You don't really see that too often. And then obviously just other little different things that you're seeing going around spring training, which is interesting. Definitely something I don't think we at other spots. So I found that very interesting. There you have Max Meyer playing some shortstop. So I found that interesting. Yeah, and then some guys have definitely stood out. I mean, Isaac kind of touched on others recently, but Sandy looking like Sandy, that's good to see. Everyone's very high on Max Meyer. What he's done, added the sweeper, going to start using the sinker a little more. He did throw it a little bit. They said he added it, but he did have a percentage of sinkers thrown in the last couple of seasons. And on the minor league side, I'll let Carver touch a little more on that. But Dylan Head has been the talk of the town. He is looking great. He's looking good to go, 100% ready to go, healthy. Andres Valor put on a lot of weight, like a lot of muscle, I think is the best way to say it. He looks like a completely different person. Same thing goes with PJ Morlando. I think it was reported he went from 185 to 220 pounds. So, it's guys getting bigger. They're looking good. Andrew Salas, the international free agent signing, the main one is in camp. He's in Jupiter. I know Isaac got to watch him a little bit today. So a lot of good going on around camp. I think this is like the time where you're just glad baseball's back. You're there. You're pretty excited, and now we're going to get into game action real soon. Valente Belloso getting the start on Saturday to begin things, and maybe, who knows, Sandy should be in the following days after that, just the way the bullpens and the live BP sessions have kind of lined up.
Yeah, innovative, like Kevin said, would be the word that I would use for this new spring training, I guess, quote unquote, training style. New coaching staff, new manager, new directors of development, new stadium. As Rodriguez Chevrolet Stadium got a little bit of a facelift here to this offseason. Just seems like a new chapter in the Miami Marlins organization. That's the vibe we get. Almost everything is different. Even the clubbies, some new clubbies, the clubhouse attendance, uniforms are different. Almost everything has been changed from years prior in at least the Bruce Sherman era. And yeah, on the field wise, straight into live BPs on day one. I apologize for the ambient noise. I'm in a hotel lobby as of right now, but yeah, all the main guys who you figure to be in the starting rotation: Ryan Weathers, Daniel Contra, Valente Belloso, Cal Quantrill, they have all participated in live batting practice. The only guy that we haven't seen yet is Edward Cabrera, but I think we should be seeing him tomorrow, if I'm not mistaken. And then with Sandy, obviously it was announced that Valente Belloso will be the Grapefruit League opener starting pitcher. So that's exciting. I guess we all thought it was going to be Max Meyer. Max Meyer is scheduled to throw a live BP on Friday, so you can do the math from there as to when you might see him in Grapefruit League action. And then, on the minor league side of things, today they actually got the Dylan Head, Andrew Salas were able to participate in live BP on the main field, which I haven't seen before either. Another new tidbit of Marlins spring training. So it's been exciting to be back. Nothing like being in Jupiter in late February. So it is nice to be back.
Cabrera did throw on Sunday, so I'm guessing
that's right.
Or tomorrow. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I could only reiterate what they both said, Daniel. I mean, the only thing that I would add is, on top of it being just completely different from years past, it's just way different people. It's all new people coming in. It's a new way of thinking. It's a new way of doing things. The incorporation of technology is crazy. Like, I was there the first day, they had a TV in one of the dugouts, like showing the guys a PowerPoint on how to do base running. Like, that's stuff that we've not seen before. They also now have the exit velos and pitch speeds available immediately to players, whereas before they would have to actually ask for that. That's being made available immediately. Actually, the pitch speeds and exit velos are being displayed on a board above home plate. So it's really interesting to see how this new way of thinking and new way of doing things, and where they are spending money, as I've kind of talked about before, is being implemented. So yeah, they're not spending money on player contracts, but they are spending money on more coaches, more minds, more people to bring in, and this stuff with technology. So whether you like it or hate it, they're doing it. It's there. It's in front of you. You see it. It's real. And like I said, whether it's your thing or not your thing, that's who they are now. And that's kind of what we are digesting here first couple weeks.
Yes, lots of things going on. I want to hear from Nate. I want to hear from Lewis. Just, what have you guys seen, whether you're watching videos, whether you're watching tweets from Isaac or Kevin or Carver? What have you guys seen? Maybe questions you even have that maybe haven't been answered so far this spring.
Well, for me, spring training is mostly all about at least when you first show up late February, it's all about the new guys. So I've heard a lot of good things about Matt Mervis. You guys haven't touched on him, but he was very exciting. I was excited when the Marlins got him back from the Cubs. And, of course, seeing Sandy back out there doesn't just stop. I'm usually excited. A lot of minor leaguers that we haven't seen yet. Dylan Head being out there is amazing. Isaac's tweeted a lot about him. He looks really, really good. Seeing Ethan Salas out there for the first time as well. And just a lot of the guys that we've heard a lot about. Obviously, Ramirez looked great in live EP today, too. So yeah, just seeing a lot of the new guys, a lot of like the guys that have been there. I mentioned just how they're progressing in Jupiter, a lot of the new stuff they're using. So it's exciting. I don't think we're going to see Matt Meyer play shortstop this year, but just see how loose everyone is, and it's exciting. So hopefully to get out to Jupiter in the next couple of weeks and see it for myself. But yeah, like I said, only word I can use so far is exciting.
Yeah, and Lewis, what does Penny think about the Marlins? Is it going to be a rough season, or am I barking up the wrong tree?
Sorry about that. I just didn't want her to be barking up the whole time. But as far as with what I've seen, I haven't been out there myself, but I should be out there in the next couple of weeks, as Nate noted on his part. I feel like with McCullough, I'm very fascinated to see how much of the Dodgers kind of ethos he brings over to the Marlins. Granted, he started with that organization as a minor league field coordinator back in like 2014, so he has like 11 seasons of experience working under one of the better organizations of the sport. So I am just curious to see how that may be if the Marlins play any Dodger ball this year. And then Carver was just talking about technology. I'm curious to know of any Marlins spring training games, and I'm sure we'll find out in the coming days. We're going to have the challenge system for the balls and strikes. I've seen videos of it for other teams and players across the sport, and I really like what I see. I like how quick it is, and I'm fascinated to see if maybe the Marlins are going to have any games that implement that, if they're having it implemented in practices. So just like new advents to the game that I want to see how they kind of mingle with the Marlins and the way they kind of run their operations. I think that's something I'm very much looking forward to.
You're muted.
Sorry, the main question I wanted to ask you guys is just maybe on the positional side with hitters. It just seems like there's so many different position battles going. You have the first base. Shortstop is really locked in with Xavier, but it's really depending on what the Marlins want to see for him and if he can stick at short. But what are you guys watching maybe position-wise? Outfield, it just seems like it's Jesus Sanchez and then a lot of guys trying to get another position there. But what intrigues you the most in terms of maybe this position, maybe different battles from the Marlins on the hitting side?
Yeah, I think the interesting one is the outfield, as you mentioned, because it kind of felt like it was pretty much locked in with Dane in center, Jesus Sanchez in right. But Isaac goes out with that report the other day mentioning that Nicola mentioned, they're going to experiment them out there in center. They like the numbers. They think it could help. It could only help being more versatile. But I mean, look, there's different ways you could look at it. In center for his career, he is over the league average in DRS, but outside of that, it's not. The stats don't help. He obviously they tried this in 2023. It did not work. It actually got him injured in Tampa in one of those games, and he had to be out for a couple of days after that. But I think they'll end up just having him in right. I think that one's definitely going to be a lock. And then in center, I mean, it would have to be Dane Myers unless an Albert Almora or a Victor Mesa Jr., Derek Hill, one of those guys really come out here and really have a nice spring. Left field, I think you're kind of looking at a couple guys, those same guys, and you're adding a Griffin Conine, Kyle Stowers, two guys who made it to the majors last season. Conine definitely impressed, I think, more than what we expected, and then Stowers really struggled. The strikeout percentage through the roof, not a great approach. Yeah. And I think that's definitely the position battle I'm looking at. I think first base will kind of sort itself out once De Los Santos eventually does get sent down to minor league camp, unless, again, he has a big spring. And the catching also kind of seems pretty much good to go unless Augustin forces the hand of the front office. But I think it'll be Fortes and Liam Hicks. Those are kind of the three position battles I'm looking at right now throughout this spring. On the position player side, obviously, on the pitching side, you have the starting rotation and a couple bullpen spots to go for.
Yeah, they have no reason to start clocks. I mean, I hate to point to that. I know fans are going to hate the roster manipulation thing and the service time manipulation thing, I should say. But if they don't have to start clocks, they know this is a multiple-year project. They're not going to do it. So I don't think De Los Santos or Ramirez are going to start in the major leagues.
I would agree. And just to clarify the report with Sanchez, they are just going to experiment with this in center field. I guess they want to see it firsthand. Peter Bendix wants to see this. Clayton McCullough and the coaching staff would like to see that. And I do think it just has to do with the fact of just trying to maximize value of all their players. Hey, this guy can fake it in center field. Xavier Edwards is an everyday starting shortstop, things like that. I don't think they actually believe that Jesus Sanchez would be a center fielder on any good team, but they believe it's worth experimenting with in spring training. And the first two guys that McCullough mentioned when he was asked about who's your center fielder, it was Derek Hill was the first one, and then it was Dane Myers. Mentioned Jesus Sanchez afterward, but if I were a betting man, it'd be Jesus and right, Dane in center. You might see a lot of Derek Hill as well. I don't see room for both Myers and Hill on the active roster. I guess you could put one of them on the bench, but then it could be one of Stowers or Conine, whoever impresses more. I would lean Conine. But yeah, outfield is really where it gets fascinating, and it seems like it's going to be Mervis starting first baseman with a Jonah Bride platoon and Wagaman getting a lot of reps at third base and coming off the bench as well. So it's going to be it looks like they're going to have room for all three. I thought that there might not be room for the three of those guys in Bride, Mervis, and Wagaman, but the way that McCullough answered the question a couple of days ago, it seems like there is room for the three of them on the active 26 man. So it should be an interesting final 2 weeks of spring training for sure.
Do you guys see a scenario where the Marlins potentially open the season with 3 catchers?
No, especially not
One to
with
potentially, obviously, because you have to carry Hicks or you have to pay the $50,000 to send him back to the organization before which he came, and then just to have Brantley on there is almost like a player coach of sorts. I mean, he's obviously not going to be a coach in his title, but he's a veteran who's been around the game for a while, and maybe just somebody to mentor younger guys like Fortes and Hicks, etc.
Yeah, I find it hard that Brantley makes the roster. I mean, look, the only way I could see another catcher outside of Liam Hicks making that opening day roster is if either Hicks gets injured or he really flops. Like, he would have to flop incredibly to not make the opening day roster. But I mean, you really can't go with whatever else they have outside of Liam Hicks. And I think Carver mentioned it. They're not going to start the clock on Augustin unless, I mean, he would have to have like that Jordan Walker type spring a couple of years back that made the organization put him on the major league on the opening day roster. But it'll probably be Fortes and Hicks to begin the season. And Hicks so far has been all right, at least from what I've seen. So
yeah, he looks good. They're impressed with Hicks so far, offensively and defensively.
Yeah.
McCullough went out of his way to mention Hicks' defense. That's a big improvement so far. He did the same with Ramirez. Obviously, games have not started yet, so take everything with a grain of salt. But I definitely don't see room. I did say I think I told you guys in the chat that Rob Brantley is here as a coach and a guy to catch bullpens and sort of help the young guys. He is your as a player coach, but no, they will not be wasting a 26-man roster spot on Rob Brantley. The other couple catchers are Ramirez, like you guys mentioned, Ignaffo, Joe Mack homer today in live BP. He's looked great. He's obviously got a lot to prove still in AAA. I don't see him as an imminent big leaguer. But yeah, if I were a betting man, like I said, it'd be Hicks and Fortes behind the dish. And Hicks caught Sandy for what it's worth. And, in live BP, obviously Fortes will be the one on opening day, I presume. But, the fact that they're letting Hicks, the other guy that's pretty much guaranteed to be on the opening day roster, catch their ace, that shows some sort of trust.
And he's been there since like way before camp started too. Like he's been there. He's been in Jupiter. Him, Ignaffo, a couple other guys have been there for like at least like 2 weeks before camp even started. Like they were there already working out with Joe Singley. So the guy's putting in the work. So I like this guy so far. The Marlins like him so far. He'll be on the team. Fortes obviously going to be on the team. Brantley, if he accepts the assignment, obviously he's on a minor league deal. He's going to go to AAA. And then that's going to be it. So, yeah.
I will say, too, Isaac touched on Sandy being the opening day starter, and Carver also noted, service time manipulation, which it's no secret that teams do this. I don't see him having a chance to make the team out of spring training, but I do think it's important to maybe consider, a butterfly effect scenario here where obviously spring training results don't necessarily matter that much, and Sandy is going to get a couple of outings this spring, but you have to think, even amidst coming back from Tommy John surgery, with his contract being what it is and what his track record suggests, he's still going to be a very hot name on the trade target once the deadline kind of rolls around. I think, should he be effective enough that the Marlins are able to offload him and trade him to another organization, that could open the door for like a Robbie Snelling, who pitched well after he came over from San Diego in the minors. I believe he made it to AAA, if I'm not mistaken. Good, mid to low 90s from the left side. Could make up for the loss of a Braxton Garrett in the midst of that. Marlins are very left-handed deficient, in that organization right now. So I don't know.
Yeah.
In the future, not right away, but something to keep tabs on is, how Sandy looks in spring and then carrying over into the season where that matters more. I think that could say something about what they do with him, and then maybe the next wave of guys that come up to replace him eventually.
Speaking of starting pitching, I find this an interesting one. Obviously, I am a big fan of Snelling as well, Lulu. But the Marlins, have been marketing the heck out of Sandy Skeen since last year, since the Marlins had lost 100 games. There's a chance that Paul Skeens the rubber on opening day for the Pirates. They could easily go with their homegrown guy, Keller, to go on opening day. And the Marlins have been marketing this more than the Pirates have. And I just think it would be, we actually spoke about it with Peter Bendix. He's like, wait a second. Yeah, they might hold him for the home opener, but it turns out the Pirates go to Tampa Bay after Miami. So there's no saving him for the home opener, but there's an easy possibility that they do not put him on game one. The Marlins didn't go with Jose on game one in 2016. They went with Wei and Chen, albeit for different reasons. But still, I think it's a fascinating thing to think about, given how much publicity this matchup of the day has been given, because I don't think it's a given that Paul Skeens is the opening day starter.
Yeah, it'll be very interesting to see how that happens. Maybe it could be Mitch Keller. Yeah, the Skeens,
I pop over to the Pirates website and they have Skeens all over.
You got to market him though. You got to use him as the main marketing.
You think he is, but what do you say to Keller? That he's their guy, the one they extended?
I think this is not this is kind of missing the point. I think the issue is that how much of the Marlins excitement as an organization right now is based around one game at the start of the season, and that they are so invested in also the other side of that matchup in that one game, not even the first series, just that one game kind of speaks to their priorities.
Don't forget the Yankees a little bit before that. They're going to market the hell out of that when that approaches.
They already are. So.
Yeah.
And that one's just an exhibition, of course, for anybody that's unaware. 2 days before opening day on the March 25th. It's going to be in the middle of an afternoon. I'll be curious to see what the turnout is to that, but we could preview that more closely.
That'd be fun. That'd be a good one. Yeah. Always with the Yankees. But yeah, I want to go ahead and I wanted to ask you guys a little bit. Last season, a big talk of the Marlins was just defensively. You're going to be the worst defensive team in baseball. That ended up just really bad. We were talking about this the last couple of years. It seems like, and now going into this season, do you guys still feel that way of the Marlins defensively? Have they improved at all defensively since last season, or have they gotten worse? Or are they still maybe in that same bottom tier of MLB when it comes to defense?
Well, what's interesting is they're kind of banking on internal development. They're betting a lot on their coaches to. Two guys in particular that stand out that we expect to be playing close to every day: Xavier Edwards at shortstop and Connor Norby at third base. There was a lot of skepticism about both those guys at those positions last year, and down the stretch of the season, they didn't play especially well over there. Norby, because he's really unfamiliar with third base in general. Edwards, largely due to the limitations of his throwing arm, but also some other minor deficiencies that personally I was really concerned about. A lot of their improvement will depend on whether those two guys in particular have improved at those positions now that they've been able to fully focus on them in a way that they didn't actually have the opportunity to do last year. So that's something we'll have an answer to pretty soon once they get into game action and they're kind of put into those situations. A lot of it rides on those two. I mean, just looking back at last year, some of the issues that they had in particular, getting more innings out of Otto Lopez at second base. It feels like he settled into the regular second baseman last season, but you actually break it down and he played maybe 60% of the innings at second base. Almost half of the season was spent with other guys at the position that weren't as well-rounded defensively as Otto is. So if his role is expanded, that helps. They were just bad at a lot of different spots outside of second base last year. Even first base, they were one of the weaker defensive teams. Jonah Bride was playing a lot of first base down the stretch, but that was a position that he wasn't especially smooth at. So his internal improvement will have a lot to do with it. The one thing that we touched on center field briefly, and that's an area where you could say what you want about Jazz and how his defense was kind of polarizing. Like it looked great at some moments, and other times it looked like he was a fish out of water per se. But now I think one thing I should have mentioned before, there's just going to be so many different guys cycling through center field. I think there's going to be too much focus on who wins the center field job. Nobody's going to win a center field job. I can guarantee you that. They're going to be constantly churning at that position based on who actually hits, based on who can actually play there defensively. You're going to see Dane there. You're going to see Stowers there. You're going to see Jesus there. You're going to see Sonoja there. You're going to see Hill there. You might see Albert Almora Jr. there. You might see later in the season Jacob Marcy there. You might see Andrew Pinter there. You might see guys that are not even in this organization right now. They have no answer. They have no near-term. Victor Mesa Jr., of course. I should have gotten to him sooner. Victor Mesa Jr.
We'll get to him.
You mentioned Andrew Pintar before him.
You may even see Conine moonlight there too.
I don't think that they're going to settle on one full-time center fielder at any point during this year. They have a lot of different candidates, and I I mean, I mentioned Mesa towards the end, and he's the one that might be better defensively than some of the other guys that are going more likely to make the opening day roster. That's a big question mark, and that's an important position that they really have had inconsistent defense at center field for a bunch of years, going back to like Starling Marte, who is very good offensively and actually not so great defensively either. That's been one area that they still haven't addressed, and I don't think there's going to be a lot of continuity in center field, no matter what this particular season. Which is all to say, I think the ceiling on this defense is still relatively low. And even if you want to be really optimistic about some of these individual players, overall, I have a hard time seeing it even being better than an average defense, all things considered. And more likely, it's going to wind up being somewhat of a liability again.
I think if Griffin Conine plays a full year at the major league level in left field, or if he just somehow finds his way to right, if Sanchez plays well enough to be traded at the deadline, that will help their defense in some regards. I think a full season of Otto Lopez, whether he's playing second base primarily and then cameoing at third base and playing shortstop on an off day for, say, Edwards, I think will help that team as well. I mean, if you look at like the fielding Bible metrics on Otto Lopez, he was the 4th best second baseman by DRS, and he played like 400 fewer innings than any other player in that top 4, top 5. So he's, obviously he's going to help your defense. I think Conine, what he showed in his brief stint was excellent. If you could live with the strikeouts and he hits enough home runs and the defense remains elite, then he's like a Hunter Renfroe type where he's just like hitting for power, playing good defense in the corners, and then, you deal with the rest. But overall, yeah, I kind of agree with Eli that, majority of this team, particularly Edwards, I think is the most concerning when it comes to the outlook for that team on a defensive level.
And
I think the entire left side of the infield in general with Edwards, we haven't seen, too much of it. Sure, we saw a little bit in the second half last year, but still not too much that you're confident you can do it every day. And Norby, who's, like you said, learning a new position. But I am excited to watch Otto at second, just like Lewis said. He had 17 outs above average last year. I think he got some of a Gold Glove bid, to be honest with you. He played amazing there last year, plenty of sensational plays. And then at first, Mervis and Brad are both below average. Mervis does have a good arm. He pitched in college, but outside of Otto, I'm not, the alarms aren't sounding off yet, but a ball hits the left side of the infield, I'm going to hold my breath a little bit. That's for sure.
Yeah,
I think it's his reaction time that concerns me the most. Like, I don't understand the disconnect between a guy who's, a good bat to ball hitter, is speedy when it comes to running the bases, but just defensively, there's just like something I feel is a miss when it's, he gets the ball, ground ball hit to him, and it feels like something just a light kind of just goes off. And I think that's the biggest reason. I mean, other than the arm being in the first percentile, and according to Statcast, that's a concern too. But I just don't think his baseball IQ when it comes to playing the position, I think lends itself to a long-term home at shortstop. I think he's just a second baseman masquerading at shortstop. But the problem is you already have an elite second baseman, so by proxy you have to leave him there because they also don't have any other options that are next to ready.
Yeah, and Mikola did mention. Sorry, Mikola did mention Al Lopez to get some reps at shortstop as well. So take that with a grain of salt.
Yeah, and to Edwards' credit, I mean, the arm definitely. I saw the improvements there. It's a lot better. Isaac, I know you were able to watch in these last couple of days. I was there on Monday to watch that. It's better. I mean, there was one like misplay from him, but outside of that, I mean, it's there. The arm for Norby, which I know was an issue, it's also there. It's improved. I'm not going to say it's perfect and they're going to be great defenders, but there is improvement, and that's what matters at the end of the day, I guess. And let's see now. I think you mentioned spring training doesn't really matter to a certain extent, the results, but I think the results defensively would in this case, especially for an Edwards, for an Norby. You get the reps and you get to see hopefully the improvement from those two. And if those two guys are looking a lot better on the defensive side of things, I mean, that's huge for the Marlins, and that's huge for the overall, I guess, defensive outlook that we've been talking about a little bit.
Yeah, now we're heading into that halfway mark of the stream. Eli, do we have anything for a little break, or do we want to head into?
I think what we should do as a transition, we should I'll quiz you guys with my annual non-roster invitees, because today was photo day. Very conveniently, today was photo day at Marlins Camp. Hundreds of photos that we're going to sort through privately and share. In this case, I just wanted to focus on the non-roster invitees that would be difficult to recognize. I can tell Kevin is excited, but I kind of like him to go last because I think he'll probably have a better chance than anybody else at figuring these out. But I have 6 total players, 3 hitters and 3 pitchers from Marlins camp. A combination of guys that were prospects getting the invite this year versus some that were signed as minor league free agents with the invite. And generally, I'm going to go from easiest to hardest. None of them are super easy, but
And you have to give
start
a guess, whoever you go to.
Okay, I'll start with this one right here.
That was
Does anybody have a guess about this NRI?
Can I go?
Nobody else has it. Go ahead.
That's Jacob Marcy.
That's Jacob Marcy, the one guy that's actually not
yeah.
playing right now because he's nursing a oblique injury.
He looks like
But
a
you couldn't
shredded
tell.
shot.
You couldn't tell from this photo.
That's
Very
a big
photo.
hat. He's wearing a huge hat. Jesus.
I'm getting all of these.
He's jacked.
Okay, so from the other end of the spectrum, a more veteran player. Who we got?
That's
Albert
really don't
Almora?
know?
That's Almora.
Yeah.
As Albert Almora Jr. Yes,
There you go.
one of the older
That's not what he
guys.
looks like in the. That's not what he looks like in the clubhouse, man. I swear. What the hell is this?
What does he look like in the clubhouse? That's
He
different.
looks
I
exactly
don't
like
know.
that, man.
No, he doesn't.
Yeah. Okay, so actually, I think all of these are pretty hard. I don't know if I would have gotten any
Yeah.
of these. Okay, maybe this is the one that I think I would have gotten without cheating as well. On the pitching side,
Oh, that's Stanovich.
Dale Stanovich.
Wow.
Oh.
Yeah, that one I know.
Left-handedness is a hint, you could say.
Yeah.
I think I would have gotten this, but I remember him having longer hair last year, something like that.
Oh. Let's go.
Okay.
I like this. I like this.
Let's stick with the pitching right here. Who's
Oh,
that?
that's-
Righty.
That's Freddie Tarnock.
It is.
Is
Freddie
it?
Tarnock.
Yeah,
You could have told me that was Brad Hand, and I wouldn't have said no.
Yeah.
Well, he's right-handed.
But then
So.
I'm worried about you if you know who Freddie Tarnick is.
Yeah,
Yeah,
okay. We need to start going out a little bit more, bro. I promise. We need to go out
Got a
little
lot
bit.
of time during the FIU lectures.
I got 2 more for you on the hitting
This will be a
side.
good Jeopardy.
Oh, that's
for us.
you should get that,
Oh.
Isaac.
Oh, isn't that what's his name?
I don't know how anybody could get this without actually being there.
That's Heriberto Henriquez or whatever.
Hernandez.
Hernandez. Because Golly or
Heriberto
Yeah.
Hernandez.
yeah, someone on the Marlins gave me that person's name.
Okay, and a final one.
I love
Pitcher.
this segment. That's just
Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah. I complimented him.
It took me a couple of days to get, name to face, but I figured it out.
Justin King, right there. Yeah,
He's a king.
reliever.
We should do you see this should be a Jeopardy thing.
Son of the week.
Carver, is he any good, Carver?
Yeah, we're going to minor talk. This
That's
portion, I
sad.
want to talk a lot about minors.
Justin King, I haven't seen too much good from him so far, personally.
I know. That's why I asked.
Like it is the Arizona Fall League number.
Kevin, you were going to mention Max Acosta and how
That's a
he's
stud.
doing.
That's a
We could
stud.
start a little stud of the week, and you mentioned him right off the bat.
Yeah.
What really, impressed you about him so far?
I think I think he has that ability to stick it short. He's a pretty big dude from for an infielder, and
Mhm.
I think the power is going to be there. I know Aram mentioned that he made a swing adjustment or a stance adjustment approach, whatever you want to call it. He looks a lot better, man. I think this is a guy who's definitely going to see some time at the major league level at some point. He could play third, he could play second, play a little bit of everywhere, but I think he's good defensively, and it's definitely a guy who stood out, at least just recently, just watching infield drills, watching BP. It's a guy who I think, as we say, he's a stud. I think he's a bit of a
I'm
stud.
gonna guess that's Kaba, but I'm probably wrong.
No, that is the player.
Lewis, that's
that
Acosta.
Oh, that's Ronnie. No, that's Ronnie Paulino.
That was Penny. Who
Oh my god, that's amazing. That's Max
That's a big
Acosta.
Lewis moment.
That's
That's
Acosta,
right.
Lulu.
It's Ronnie Paulino.
Not part of the NRI quiz. He's already on the roster. For people to get on the same page, Acosta was part of the Jake Berger trade, which was not a very popular deal when it was made during the course of the offseason. The Marlins getting 3 guys, and I think this has been kind of reiterated in trying to analyze that in hindsight, it was hard to pin who the headliner of that deal was. And you take a closer look at each of the players involved: Echedri Vargas, Ryan Mendoza, who Isaac saw pitch today, and Max Acosta. There's things to like about each of them. And I mean, as we get closer to the start of the season, I lean towards Acosta being, well, he's certainly the one we'll see soonest in the big leagues. That's part of it as well. For a trade that was pretty unpopular in the moment, I think it's a little bit easier now to wrap your mind around why the Marlins thought they got fair value for Berger, both the intangible and the tangible stuff that he brought to the table, and to lose him even with all those years of club control still to go.
Absolutely.
I'll call out Mendoza just real quick because you mentioned him. I didn't see him today, obviously, but I saw him the first day that we were there throw a live, and that guy looks intriguing to me. I mean, it's tricky looking stuff from the left-hand side. The guy's only 21. I think his slider is good. He got a couple Ks just from what I watched, getting a couple strikeouts. One of them was Victor Mesa Jr. Like he looks pretty intriguing. I would keep an eye on that guy. I think he could be good.
Yeah. What I would say about him is that I would say that he is probably the second best player they got in that trade. No knock on Echedri Vargas or Echedri, but I think Brian Mendoza has a legitimate chance to break out again. I think you'd start off at high A and then maybe end up at double A Pensacola this year. But he looked good today against Salas, Dylan Head, and a couple other minor leaguers, but he looked really good. Great breakout season last year, 4 pitches. I think he is going to end up being the second best player they got in that trade, Acosta being the first.
Wow, interesting there. I was going to ask you guys, a question. The trades the Marlins have made, whether it's the offseason, last season, all these new guys, all these young players, just how have they been doing so far this spring? You mentioned Max Acosta. We saw, Jared Cerna, Starling Caba. How have those new acquisition players been doing so far this spring? For any of you guys who want to answer that question.
Yeah, I was able to see a little bit of Cava. I actually haven't seen him on defense. I saw him take BP, and that's really the most I've seen. But it looked pretty good. It's a nice swing. I think it's going to be his approach that's really going to take him pretty far. Just given he literally would walk more than strike out, and that's still the case even during the struggles at low A last season. I found it super interesting what he told me. He said 70% of my preparations is on the defensive side. I was like, oh God. I don't think fans are going to like that one, but I think that's obviously going to change. It'll be 50-50 or 70 on the offense, 30 on the defense. Who knows? But yeah, he definitely impressed. Dylan Head, I acquired in the Luis Arias trade. Another guy who I'm really excited to watch. And when we were doing our top 30, one thing is like, we can't rank him too high just because we want to make sure, when we see him, it's good and it's legit. And obviously it's been a bit. We haven't seen him in the game action yet, but it's from what we've seen, it's pretty good. And I think it's going to be pretty legit real soon. I think now it's just a matter of, what the speed looks like, obviously going through hip surgery. You want to make sure he's still an 80 grade runner, as they say. And aside from that, I've seen Marion Boyd from afar, but nothing crazy. De Los Santos has been taking some reps at third, which I found very interesting. I haven't really seen him too much at first. I don't know if you've seen De Los Santos at first, Isaac, at all, but I haven't.
No.
Nat Mervis has been someone who's really stood out as well throughout camp. So just a decent amount of guys that definitely stood out, but I think we kind of know where some of them will end up in terms of assignment or even if they'll break camp or not.
And not to state the obvious here, because obviously he's probably arguably the second best prospect in the system. And we usually talk about his defense or lack thereof, but Agustin Ramirez's bat just seems so advanced at this stage. I know he's 23 years old, but we've seen him get a lot of reps in live batting practice in the batter's box, and he hits the ball so hard. He hit a 110-mile-an-hour ball at the gap in left center field today on the main field. I think it was against Weathers. He's laying off tough off-speed pitches. I forgot who he was facing today, a right-handed pitcher, and he was just laying off. Oh, he was facing Bender and Tinoco and laying off really tough breaking balls low and away and staying back on the ones that get backed up, and he's ripping them. He's just got such a nice short swing. He's just looked really, really good offensively. And man, even if he's a 30-grade defender, 40-grade defender, I don't care. He's going to be in your everyday lineup. That kid can hit. He's a monster. He's massive, and the Marlins really did well with that trade, given that they still have Jared Cerna and I think Abraham Ramirez as well. But I've been very offensively, he's the guy that I've been most impressed with so far this spring.
Yeah,
call
just-
out
that's
one
about
more
them.
name that they got in a trade, Daniel, that probably I'm the only person that is going to call out this name, but I'll do it anyways. Garrett Forrester, who they got in the Brian De La Cruz trade. That guy, the first day, the day that I was there, he hit 2 absolute nukes, one in live BP, the other one was in just batting practice. And then he had a couple other hits in live BP as well that were line drive hits, clear as day. They would have been hits in a real game. So off of multiple different Marlins pitchers. So I think that guy, he's 23. He's going to get pushed pretty hard. He's only played at single A. I think he's going to get pushed pretty hard. That's a guy that I would keep an eye on as well. And he plays third base, which, the Marlins need that. So Garrett Forrester, who they got in the Brian De La Cruz trade. The only other piece of that trade was Jun Suk Shim, which if you like him, then okay. But personally, I haven't seen a ton from him. So I think Garrett Forrester, if that trade is going to work out in the Marlins' favor, I think it's gonna hedge on him, and he's looked good so far to me.
He's an OBP machine too. I remember just reading his Fangraphs page when I saw that news came down about the De La Cruz trade, and guy just gets on base. I hope to see if he, as he goes up levels in the minors, because I know he's kind of struggled to hit for power at times. If his lack of power tends to get in the way of his plate discipline and he starts swinging out of his shoes more to try and compensate. But I mean, everybody here who knows me knows I'm an OBP freak, so I love seeing guys that can take their walks when they need to. And the Marlins are like a team that historically just doesn't have guys that do that, especially in this Sherman post Loria era. So yeah, I'm excited to see him go up the levels in the minors this year too.
Yeah, just to back up what Isaac said, Ramirez has definitely looked awesome. I think that's the best way to put it. I don't know how much of it has to do with him taking the most reps and knowing the guys the most or seeing the guys the most, but I think it was on Sunday he took Edward Cabrera deep, and it was it's impressive stuff. I have to say the least from someone like Augustin. He's caught, he may have caught most of pitchers already too. So I know he's caught Yuri a couple times in some side sessions. So that definitely helps. Defensively, obviously, we can't see it until we see it in game action. So who knows? Maybe he'll start on Saturday or these next couple days. So he'll definitely get his opportunity. And again, I know we talk about, you don't want guys to, you don't want to start their clocks, but I feel like if Ramirez really, really, really has a nice spring and forces the front office's hand, you kind of have to put him in there to begin the season to see what you got. And again, a lot of it has to do with Liam Hicks. If he flops and Ramirez is playing well, it's tough to say you're going to keep the guy who flopped during spring training just because
it's not that tough. It's not that tough when you're rebuilding. The choice is do I have to give back the catcher we just drafted for free?
They tried to trade him to Tampa. They were trying to trade him.
We did hear that there was reportedly consideration to not actually holding on to Hicks once they selected him with their Rule 5 pick. That is true. They have now reached this point in the season. I'm not saying he's a lock to make the team, but at the same, they're not going to return him just so that Augustine can get to. I mean, they're not forcing Augustine on the opening day roster. I don't think there's any possibility that he does make it for just the obvious reasons we've laid out, where it's just not in their long-term interest to do so when they can simply wait a couple weeks into the season in order to make the same move with him to bring him up. So, I mean, they'll be curious to see how he would fit if they hold on to Hicks. I think it was mentioned earlier in the show. I think Lewis wondered, is there a possibility they carry 3 catchers at the same time? And not at the start of the year, but I'm sure there could be parts during the season when you see that. Even though they did acquire Hicks and perhaps they want to get some value out of him long term, Rule 5 picks, as we saw Nasim Nunez being a prime example last year, just because you're on the active roster doesn't mean you have to have a significant role on the roster. It is possible if talent ultimately says that Augustine is ready for the majors and they still want to evaluate Hicks as a big leaguer, there could be patches of the season where there's 3 catchers on the roster at the same time, considering that Hicks can play a little first base and Augustine can play a little first base. And of course, this team doesn't have a permanent DH right now. There are going to be points during the season where I think the main point that I think we could agree with is that Hicks is not going to be blocking Ramirez throughout the entire year or even through most of the year. They'll find a way to get Ramirez up to the big leagues, and he's, of course, their bigger priority for sure.
Just real quick, I want to ask Kevin or Carver about what you guys have seen. If anything notable have you seen from Kyle Sowers, who was also, I guess you can still say, newly acquired recently?
So he wasn't there before full squad like some other guys, but he did have like a really hard hit recently. Aside from that, I haven't seen too much. Like, I think it'll just come down to the game reps. You could maybe Isaac's seen a little more because he's been there obviously more than Carver and I following full squad. But yeah, I mean, I think you're looking at a competition between him and Conine for left field, and right now Conine's probably beating him by a lot. I think I would say, and again, I mean, you also have to, obviously Peter Bendix doesn't care about marketing or whatever, but having Jeff Conine's kid there would be pretty nice throughout the whole or full season. Just saying. So they're gonna have to choose one or the other at the end of the day because they can't have two of the same player. Unfortunately, Jesus Christ. Yeah,
well, Kevin was on the screen. I wanted to bring this up because Kevin did see firsthand. Jacob Berry is still there. He is
Carver, go off.
Just to give some people some quick context, for a lot of the second half of last year, it seemed they had converted him to an outfielder. He was playing right field instead of the infield. He's been a third baseman for most of his minor league career and has not gone well. And lo and behold, he showed up to spring training. He's listed as an infielder, and he's playing third base again.
I can't do it. I can't talk about
Rant.
No, I can't talk. What is the reason to put this player back at their base? Yes, I know it's a thin position for the Marlins. This player, it's just Eli just talked about, do they have the skill or do they not? I think that this man has proven he doesn't have the skill to play at third base. And I hate to be critical, and I love prospects and I love covering this. I think that this guy has proven time and time again that he does not have what it takes to play third base. And now they're putting him back. And I don't that's something that I do not understand. So they must see something that we all don't see, which that's why they're there and we're not. But
yeah, $6 million.
This is I don't think that this is a smart baseball decision to make this man play third base. He's not good there.
Yeah, it really doesn't make sense. I mean, the one time I took a clip of the guy taking a grounder, he couldn't even grab it. So
I should have known when they introduced him to the media when he was taking BP and everything. It was rough. It was a rough introduction day for Mr. Berry right after.
But that's okay. I mean, you drafted him for his bat, right? You didn't draft him for his defensive ability. They did the right thing by taking him off of that position to allow him to tap more into his natural raw tool, which is the bat. And now they're putting the pressure back on by saying, go back. And he did well with the bat, at least a bit when he was late last year when they moved him off. And now they're putting him back. I don't get this. This is a decision, and the overall handling of this player by player development, whether it's the new guys or the old guys, I have not understood it.
Does he make the majors within the next 2 years?
Yeah, that's something.
I think he does. Yeah, but it's not going to be because of.
Well, for
base.
Eli's sake, he better make it.
I picked him. If you're watching on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast, you can find the official show where we did our annual call-up contest, and I picked Barry, my 4th round pick. I don't feel strongly that he's going to debut this year, but he played in AAA last year, and as Carver emphasized, what matters is the bat. He is a good contact hitter. Can hit from both sides, who, if he consistently pulls the ball, he has enough power to be sort of useful as an offensive player. That over the course of the season, I wouldn't be surprised if he gets called up at some point. But yeah, that's a whole another story about how even offensively he's been extremely inconsistent throughout his minor league career to this point. It's just we're ultimately in a good place that there's so much depth in this farm system right now that you don't have to have irrational confidence in Barry figuring things out. Because there's just so many other now position players that are also in the upper minors that could potentially debut this year that bring something to the table. It's that's been the bright spot. The one thing they've gained from a lot of the trades they've made is a lot of position players in the upper minors that we may be seeing for the first time this year.
Yeah. Carver, I wanted to ask you, this is your guy, this is your boy, this is your project, Andrew Salas. The Marlins made him one of the highest paid international prospects and the highest in their pool. What have you seen from him? Well, I know only 16 years old, just a baby, not even 18, probably still going through puberty. Just, talk to us, what you've seen from Salas, coming from that baseball family, how he's adjusting to pro life.
Yeah, it's just a confidence. I mean, I called it out to you guys, I think on another show, just the confidence that he exudes. Like I went up to him and asked for an interview, and I'm expecting this tepid little kid that's wide-eyed and doesn't know what he's doing and doesn't know why he's there, which I've seen before with other prospects, and that's the natural progression of life. But this guy really acts already like he's been there before. He's articulate. He's talking in baseball terms. He knows what he's talking about. He knows what he's already looking for against pitchers and BP. It's just a very, very mature kid. And if you talk to him not knowing his age, you wouldn't think he's as old as he is. So it's super cool. I was expecting him to be overwhelmed by coming stateside right out of, being taken in an international selection period. And yes, I know he grew up in the United States, which is a credit to him as well. It's probably has aided him, but I was expecting him to be overwhelmed by this, being the youngest kid around by far. And he really doesn't seem to be phased. I mean, he's already shows good swings. He's showing all the necessary routine plays at shortstop that I've seen in his work. It doesn't really seem to be too terribly raw already, even though he's as young as he is. I think he's well advanced for his age, both mentally and tools wise. So I'm really excited for this player, man. There's a reason why I wanted to rank him, and we wanted to rank him as high as we did in our rankings. I think he deserves to be at number 2. I think that he will show that he deserves to be at number 2 rather quickly. And I'm really excited to see what he does. I think he will start his career with either the FCL or the Hammerheads. And that's going to be absolutely a joy to see this guy play baseball, because I think that he is going to be very, very good.
Yep. Yeah. Anything else? You guys, any other players you guys have your eye on? Maybe any of the 2024 rookie class draft guys, how they're looking or anything like that?
No, but I definitely think we should probably touch on, at least towards the end, what Peter and Bruce said the other day. I know Eli wrote an article about it. I know there was a lot of fans who weren't very happy about the questions asked and the answers received. So, yes, Peter and Bruce spoke. It was definitely interesting. Bruce, the way he was bragging about certain things. I know Eli touched on it in his article. Let him talk about that more. But mentioning that it'll be the second biggest weight room in baseball. Mentioning the renovations being made to Roger Dean, all of that. Not Roger Dean specifically, but the facilities behind Roger Dean, which are already underway. They're gutting the whole thing. They're making everything new, press box new, everything, whatever. But yeah, I mean, look, it seems like, and it was also very interesting how you mentioned, Clayton had the best speech he's ever heard from a manager, pumping him up, mentioning Sandy versus Paul Skeens, which Isaac was alluding to, which is very interesting from the Marlins to do that, obviously trying to promote that first game. Same thing goes with Peter. And then the Sandy trade rumor saying, he signed Sandy to this extension. He gets that he's the face of the franchise, but he's going to let the front office do what they have to do. And Peter mentioning it's the best Sandy's ever looked in his career, which I found extremely interesting, 2 years removed from unanimously winning the Cy Young. But yeah, if you guys want to touch on that, I did find this very interesting. It was a lot of nothing at the same time, but yeah, I would say that's the way. It was definitely a lot of nothing, but at the same time, it was a lot of, sometimes you feel like you would come out of a press conference or a scrum like this feeling better about a certain situation. And I think I feel a lot worse about the Sandy situation coming out of this press conference.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they were it just felt like ways of just, showing Sandy out for other teams, like, oh, he's improved so much, he's doing this,
exactly,
doing that. Just kind of like, hey, hey guys, look how good Sandy is. You want to keep an eye on Sandy. So you see how he's doing so good. To kind of like boost, to boost his value.
I was about to say that exactly.
It feels like a preconceived notion that Sandy will probably get traded. It's not if will he. It's more like when will it happen and to what team. But we'll cross that bridge when it gets here. That will suck. But if no one else has anything to mention, I want to do a little prediction time. And
wait. We still have what, 7 minutes? Yeah.
I mean, it's a good prediction.
What I just want to, it's an interesting contrast of styles when you have these two addressing the media next to each other, because as fans are now well accustomed to, Bendix doesn't give anything to you with his responses. He is a master of the word salad. And actually, I mean, that's even saying too much, because he sometimes even is very brief with his responses in a way that's not even all that satisfying at all, with the way that he evades questions, and also just he doesn't acknowledge the individual players on this team the way that we'd like to imagine that someone does. We mentioned like he goes out of his way in this case to hype up Sandy, but with the ulterior motive of the fact that they want to reassure potential trade suitors that he's doing really well. When trying to highlight other like individual players on this team, he doesn't want to get attached to these individual players because his big picture business plan and his strategy with running this team is not to build around individual players for all that long. Like eventually these guys, when they get too much money or they reach a certain point on their aging curve, that they're going to be flipped, and he's going to trust in the player development to replace them internally. That really comes across when he addresses the media about things like this and how it just doesn't like, it refuses to look at this team 1 year at a time and who's here right now. It's always about like the bigger picture, the one eye on the future, in this case in a way that's unsatisfying, and a lot of his responses are pretty insincere. And then you have Bruce, who at the start of this press conference, Kevin kind of described it, where outright bragging about the state of the organization in a way that is so out of touch with the way that most other people view the Marlins. Like this is one of the most least desirable organizations. Any way you want to look at it, it's unequivocally one of the least desirable organizations at this moment in time, considering the current talent in this organization right now, all the upheaval that they've had, the people in charge at various levels who are taking on new responsibilities that they haven't shown they can do before. It's at a moment in time where there's just so little, it's so unproven across all these different facets in a way that to be optimistic that they're on the verge of breaking through in some way, there's nothing really substantial behind that. Then he can't help himself in that one moment to say, I think we're going to win more games than you think we are. A lot more games.
Yeah, that was ridiculous.
Season. And while that's a kind of slip that Bendix would never make himself, and I'm saying that I guess in some way I respect Sherman doing that and letting his fandom out. And it's also the way that Bendix is so calculated in the way that he talks, and that Sherman is almost the opposite, in that he is trying to find optimism in all these places, made for ultimately an unsatisfying presser, just because every time that they speak, we get feedback from fans about trying to ask tougher questions or trying to ask about something else.
Taking the words right out of my mouth, brother.
And I understand the sentiment behind that. We've been down this road. It doesn't. These pressers unfortunately don't accomplish much at all because of the way that these Bendix in particular, the way that he handles the media. And we've been fortunate to get to know him in various capacities off the record, and obviously in ways that we can't share on here. That the face that he presents in these press conferences isn't who he truly is deep down. Unfortunately, like this is the only access that the general public gets to him. Is how he handles himself in front of these microphones, and he's so guarded with his information and with his true priorities. That's kind of the thing that I think is really frustrating, is that just from watching what the Marlins do, what his priorities are, but he doesn't really convey them in a very honest way when he gets these opportunities to do so.
Yeah, I think you literally just took the words out of my mouth. Like, we see what you guys say. Like, there's not much we can do, folks. Like, you go to past press conferences, and there have been tough questions asked, So for you guys to say we don't ask the tough questions, we should lose our credentials. We lose our credentials if we ask a tough question? It's wrong. Like what do you like? Just look at the way these guys talk, and again, we love covering this team, but just it has to be very clear what these guys say at the end of the day won't. We could ask the toughest question possible, which a lot of people have, and credit. I mean, someone asked about Sandy the other day, which I don't think many people were going to do, but someone came out and asked, and that was a tough question. And look at the answer. And I think that's the greatest example you could take. Peter doesn't give you much, and I think Eli made that very clear. Bruce gives you a little bit more, but it's more of a bragging thing just to make sure, he's on the right side of things with the organization, right side with the fans, which he tries to be. But again, I mean, just coming at us for saying we don't ask the tough questions, I think is wrong. I think we try. I think there's a reason why we don't, because we know the answer we're going to get, and that will be the case every single press conference with Peter Bendix until he hires a GM, and that GM takes the responsibility of doing what Peter does, which it's still very surprising that he doesn't have a GM to do this type of stuff, because that would be the case. You bring in a GM and he would take these press conferences instead of Peter, or he would just do this yearly press conference in Jupiter. So I think it's wrong. And again, the fans could have their opinions. I understand where they're coming from, but it's just look at the way these guys talk and then tell us to ask a tough question again.
Yeah, Kevin, you're exactly right. And I'll say one more thing about what Bruce said. If you're going to boast as much as he did in flaunt, and then you talked about signing minor league free agents, like that almost seemed like satire when I saw that. So I'm with you guys completely on it's. Peter's a very closed book, and Bruce is pretty much the opposite. And if you're going to talk about, how good the organization is and bring up weight rooms and minor league free agents, then I don't think the bar is set too high. So, but like Kevin said, with the tough questions, I completely agree with you.
My favorite comment about the weight room was Sherman said they have now the second best weight room. It's like, nobody brags about being second. Who the hell brags about being second? Somebody didn't watch Talladega Nights.
These are great people off camera. Just to be very clear, off when you turn off a recorder or camera, these are good people to talk to. But
I understand towing the company line, and I feel like when it comes to Bendix having these rehearsed answers to quote unquote tough questions, I feel like they're generally reserved for players that maybe merit the tough questions. Like, I'll give you an example. Last year, I asked him in like a week before Luis Ariz was traded, I'm like, when is it that you make the decision that the season is a wash and we need to start over and start offloading big league talent for players that are going to help you? And I got the same answer that he's given in just about every scenario when it comes to trading a marquee player on that roster. We're always going to have conversations to get the team better, rearrange the words in some semblance of the order. And it's just like, you're not really doing anything. You're polishing a turd with toilet paper. You're not helping solve the problem. You're just kind of leaving people with more questions than they have answers. And I think obviously that's going to annoy a fan base that's so long starved of marquee big league players. And then when you have players who are even flirting with that kind of status and you trade them and then your answers don't necessarily suffice, curious fans, it's only going to further, aggravate them. And, I would, that being said, long story short, would love for them to be more cerebral, but would also love for them to invest in the big league team to actually have people excited to go to those games and to increase, the reputation of the organization as somewhere to where people want to play. It's at this point, it's just like you're going to rehab your status. Tim Anderson, Cal Quantrill now, make of it what you will. But yeah, I mean, I wish there was a little bit more forthcomingness with, the people who are in charge and making those decisions for that team.
Yeah, I think you're on the right note. I think with this, we'll head into a little prediction time, a little fun, little segment here, and then we'll end it off for the night. Get everyone home at a reasonable hour. But Eli, do we have a prediction time video? Do we have a new one, or
we have a placeholder one? Let's hear it.
This is prediction time.
I don't want to toot my own horn here, but I'm really good at this.
Yeah. Great to see Mr. Kapler for the first time this year.
Yeah, so for this prediction time, it's not going to be series, games. I think we did this last season, but for this prediction, I want to ask you what Marlin will hit the first home run this spring? Who's going to hit the first one? I think I forgot who it was last year, but it could be any name. It could be there we go, Tristan Gray. See, it could be any name there. I'll start it off to see maybe the headspace that we might get into it, but whenever you're ready, Eli.
Wherever I hid my music, I can I have to dust off the music. There it is.
All right, here we go. I'll go first. So for my prediction on who will hit the first home run this spring, I'm going to go with Davison De Los Santos. He's going to mash it. First at bat, home run, 452 feet. Evan.
Yeah, you always have to go with the more random names. We saw Tristan Gray. So I'm going to go with Eric Wagaman hitting the Marlins' first spring training home run. He's gonna impress the Marlins this spring, I think.
All right, Nate.
I'm not going to go as random as you two, but I miss his music, and I'm going to go with Griffin Conan. I think he's going to rope a ball over the right field fence and get everything started for him in the new number, in number 18.
Lewis.
I think Kyle Stowers is going to tease you like a trailer to a bad movie that actually looks good and homer in his first spring game and then immediately just revert to being an AC vent that swings and misses and makes it breezy everywhere. So, Kyle Stowers.
Oh, I miss you, Lewis. Eli.
Give me Ronnie Simon, non-roster invitee. Ronnie Simon. He'll get into a lot of games trying to earn a job at the big league level early in the year. He has won the Dominican Winter League MVP before, so he's somebody that can really rise above the rest of the crop if he's playing at a certain level of competition. But I think late in the spring training game against some Double-A pitcher from another organization, Ronnie Simon puts himself on the map with a homer.
All right. Last and certainly not least, Mr. Alex Carver.
Well, this guy couldn't figure out Wrigley Field, but he did figure out the minors, and he's looked good so far. I'll give it to Matt Mervis. Matt Mervis, first home run for the Marlins. I think it's just going to be squeaking out of Roger Dean Chevrolet Stadium, as a lot usually do, but I'll give it to Mr. Mervis as our first home run this week. Oh, wait, somebody random.
The
All
fence
right.
is in now, guys. The fence is in, so you never
I
know.
like that. I like that. Some good names here. Some good
Eli,
names.
Ronnie Simon, he's like 5'5".
I have heard.
Hey, what's
that
wrong
he
with the
was,
Fur King?
He's
Maybe
like
an
the
inside the
tallest
park
baseball
home
player
run.
I've ever seen.
Yeah, they adjust the dimensions at Roger Dean because of the construction. Maybe it catches somebody off guard that
Yeah, I
the
guess.
gaps are slightly at a different angle than they used to be, and it bounces around there. He'll find a way.
All right. That's going to do it here for FOF Live. We're bringing to you this all throughout spring. You can check us out on our Twitters for myself, Daniel, Eli, Kevin, for Isaac, who joined us earlier, Nate, Alex Carver, and Lewis. This is FOF Live, presented by you guys. As always, go fish.
Have a wonderful evening.
Let's go!